everybody, and welcome to the Esoteric Order of Gamers. My name is Peter. If you've ever been to this channel before, you know what it's all about. It's about thematic, imaginative, fantastic games, tabletop games, whether board games or tabletop miniatures games. And today we're going to look at a board game with miniatures. It's by Awaken Realms, but something a little bit different. Not just Awaken Realms, but Awaken Realms Lite, which is a sort of spin-off of their company, which is supposedly concentrating on games which are a little less heavy and epic than their usual ones that they launch on GameFound. This one is called Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend. Now, my Japanese is not very good. It's virtually non-existent. I have been to Japan and I managed to pick up a few words while I was there, just enough to embarrass myself. But I got the impression that a lot of words have the emphasis on the end of the word. So I go Tamashii instead of Tamashii or something like that. So I'm going to go with Tamashii. If you're Japanese, please correct me. I would love to know the exact pronunciation, because this is a cyberpunk game set in a very Japanese themed cyberpunk world. It's set in the physical world and the virtual world. And I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't heard about it until I heard from Awaken Realms, and they offered me this free set so I could show it off to you. So thank you very much for Awaken Realms. Even though they send me free product, I do not charge for these videos, and my opinions are always my own, so you can rest assured of that. So I'm going to have a good look at Tamashii. I've already played it through just the prologue adventure. There's separate adventures, and I played one adventure solo just to check out the mechanics. So I do have an idea of what's going on, which I can tell you about as we go through this sort of unboxing overview kind of thing. But later on, I'm going to do more stuff about Tamashii. Of course, I'm going to do a rules summary and reference, as I always do. And hopefully I'll also have more comprehensive thoughts after I've played it a few times. So let's get started with Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend. So as I said, it's by Awaken Realms Lite. Now, I thought this was quite funny because when I opened this up, it looked like a full-on Awaken Realms game to me. It's got a beautiful big box. There's expansion material, stuff like that. It's got miniatures, the whole kit and caboodle. So it's funny that this is light. I mean, I hate to see heavy because I guess the idea is that this is more kind of entry level, and it doesn't require as much as an investment of time and effort that some of their other games do, which I think is a great idea because I love games by Awaken Realms. They do really interesting stuff, but sometimes there's so much of an investment in time that it's not possible to get into it. I reviewed ISS Vanguard, and that's how that felt for me. It's the kind of game that if I had lots and lots of time, I'd really like to get into more heavily, but I'm a very busy guy, so I just don't have the time. However, this one, I think we can do some more one-off games. You don't have to commit to a full-on campaign. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's have a look in the main box and see what Tamashii is all about. Of course, you've got your rule book here, all the information there. It's a pretty well-written rule book. I had no great difficulties picking up on how to play. Now, this isn't exactly how the box looks, however, when you get the game, because I've already been in here and unshrink wrapped things and punched components and done stuff like that. But you do get, there's a little sort of setup sheet here, which is kind of confusing. It's just a little bit confusing because you have to set up certain cards in certain ways, which is a common thing that Awaken Realms do, because, you know, cards have to be behind particular dividers and things like that. So make sure you follow those instructions first when you first get the game. You do have standees. Now, these in this copy are pretty unnecessary because you've got some very nice miniatures, but instead you can use the standees. There may be a version that doesn't have miniatures. I'm not really sure about that. Some extras come in this. So the Lost Pages is another adventure that's extra. So that's actually in the main box. And I've got some other adventures here, which are these, I've got Forbidden Chapter and Katie's Diary. So they're extra adventures as well. Now, one thing I'll say about this, which is great, I really, really like, is that there are separate little adventures, but you can play them in any order. You don't have to go through the campaign from start to finish, which is great. So you can do one-off games. Really, really like that. You've got a sheet here to keep your miniatures nice and organised, which is very, very thoughtful. And here are the miniatures themselves. I've got a tray full here. And these are some really nice steampunk kind of minis. Now, the thing that is a little bit weird is that they're all kind of characters. And when I say characters, they're bodies, because you can actually swap bodies in this game in that sort of classic, what was the book? The book in the series of Altered Carbon, where you can swap bodies and do things like that. It's got that cyberpunk idea where you can go to different bodies. So all the bodies that you've got here in various miniatures, there's no miniatures for the creatures and monsters and things that you meet. And that is because they kind of sort of follow you around in card form next to your character sheet. So you don't really need miniatures. It's a bit of a shame, but I mean, if you had miniatures for all the monsters as well, this would be absolutely packed. It would be huge. You probably couldn't fit them all. So like many Awaken Realms games, this is just one problem I have with Awaken Realms, is that sometimes their miniatures are a bit sort of extraneous to need. So they act more as markers rather than anything that you do anything with. Now, I know these aren't tabletop miniatures games and everything. You're not fighting with miniatures, but they do feel like very detailed, very beautiful, just player pieces. They could be meeples or something like that. That said, of course, having a beautiful painted miniature, if you have the time to paint them on your board, certainly enhances the whole theme and the immersion and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say don't have them. It's just that their games aren't geared to interaction between miniatures, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so I'll show you some of these in detail a little bit later. Now, I've got to say the insert here is just gorgeous. Let's have a look. And you've got these player boards. Now, these are the boards that you have for each of your characters. It's a 1 to 4 player game, so you can play solo as well if you want. I played the first prologue adventure solo, and it was fine. Though I'm not a big solo gamer, I just don't find it very interesting. I prefer the company of others as well. It's more interesting to have, human interaction when you're playing a game, but I completely understand how that isn't always possible, and sometimes solo gaming is the way to go, and some people really enjoy solo gaming. So this is good for solo gaming. So you've got this nice board, and you keep track of all your stats and everything on these gauges here, and you put little cubes in these to go along, and we've got this launcher, which is the key to the game, and I'll explain that a bit later. So you get a bunch of those. There's some cards here for the bosses when you get to fighting the bosses. Special information on those. These bosses, which you'll be fighting, they do have miniatures. I'm just talking about the monsters and things that you fight and that stick with you during the game. They don't have miniatures. Right, got that clear. So then you've got this lovely lid, comes off like this, and here are the adventures themselves. And I really like the way this is done, and that they come basically in little pamphlets, like so. So we've got a little pamphlet, and it opens up, and it gives you the setup of the map that you're going to play with, and various information about the particular cards you use, and any special abilities and everything, and then special rules on the back for playing the scenario. So a nice little self-contained thing like that. And there's also a sheet to keep track of your progress through all the modules if you want to. They're all replayable as well though. Oh, and on the player boards you have this little dump section which goes at the bottom of the board. So you get your matching colour, whatever it is, and that goes down the bottom like so. Now check out this. Now this is a beautiful insert, I have to say, because you have these separate trays in here, which I love. So look at this. Look at this, that comes out. Check out that tray. It's just beautiful. And not only, it's got a little lid, and then it's got rounded edges as well. So really easy to pick up components like that. Beautiful tray. I think I'll be using this tray for lots and lots of games because it's so nice. I mean, it's not incredibly strong plastic, but it's fantastic with those lovely wells that you can get the counters out quite easily. And there's another one as well underneath it for more components, and that's a 4-compartment one. Really nice, and this has some lovely plastic pieces. You've got little wound markers. See if you can see those. And these are little experience markers. And these are your little action markers that you put on your character sheet. So I love the way they've done this. I could take these out really easily, stick them on the table, and easily access all those components. Really love that. There's more wells here for components. You get some bags. Now your bags, these are called data bags, and as you can see, there's one for each colour with a nice illustration on them as well. Very nice. And you'll be putting your data tokens in here, and you can actually modify this board as you go through and you get more experience. You can change the the amount of data tokens in here and their mix, so you can specialize in particular areas. So very nice draw counters from a bag type mechanic there. You've got some other little plastic pieces for the standees and things. Some custom dice, which are really nice. These ones, the characters roll, or the players roll, and this one is rolled for any creatures that are following you and attacking you. When I say creatures, they're kind of constructs on the web and things like that. So nice dice. And then, of course, lots of cards, heaps of cards. Now, there doesn't seem to be any room for sleeving these. So I've sleeved a few and already it's absolutely packed full. So not good for sleeving, unfortunately, but you know, it's all in one compact box. So I guess they didn't have room. Then you've got a whole lot of these map tiles, which are nicely illustrated in a sort of quite evocative way. These are the different districts that you'll follow, you'll move through during the game. There we go. As you can see, I mean, there's a heap of stuff, and this isn't a light-looking game, is it? It's got a lot of stuff, heaps of cards, beautiful components. It's not like it's certainly done on the cheap in any way, shape, or form. There's another miniature hidden down here. This might be one of the extra adventures this one belongs to. Some more counters there as well. So you're probably thinking, well, how do you play Tamashii, Chronicle of Ascend? Well, it's relatively straightforward, but kind of interesting. So let's just set up what it looks like for a character, and I'll show you roughly how it plays. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I want to do a full review later, so this is just a little overview. Okay, here's a sample setup just for a solo player. Now, there's more to it than this. Of course, this is just a little sample of the map. This might be a larger map. It depends on the particular scenario that you're playing. And as you go through, you'll encounter enemies which go over on the side here. So I've already set up a couple of enemies in the way they come out there. You've got these little markers, and there are various stats that you have. You've got a trace factor here, a memory, shields, rerolls, and power. And then over here, you've got basically a life score. It's got a nice little plastic thing that goes in there, and that shows you your limit for that score. And then you can pop a marker into that as well. You've got a core data type here. Now, you might get an opportunity to change your core data type, but at the moment it's shields. These colors match these ones as well, and there are different core data types, and they come in these 4 different colors. So here's your different data types. If the data matches your core data type, then it's called a core data. And you may get a particular advantage when it comes to manipulating your core data type. Now, this is the body that you're wearing at this particular time. This is the standard one that comes printed on the board itself. There are various combat results here, the number of dice you roll during attacks, the number of hexes you can move, and there's a special ability here that you'll get for that particular body. Now, during the game, as you get experience and encounter various things, you might have the opportunity to change bodies. So you can get different bodies with different specialties and swap from body to body, which is great. And of course, if you die, you're going to have to get into a new body as well, transfer to a new body. Now, the core of the game is this thing here, which is the launcher. And I'll get into this in a moment, but this is a really nice little mechanic, and I think it should be interesting. It was interesting in the prologue, but I'm sure it'll get far more interesting as I get more into the game. As you're moving around the hex board, which shows the different districts, you'll go into these different locations depending on how much move you have, and you have a trace step. So if you actually move into a location, you'll be increasing your trace value up this little board here, and if you stay in a location, you'll increase it by the number on the right. So you can't hang around in a place too long, or if you do, you're going to pay for it, because the trace track measures the chance that enemies will track you down and try and get you. So as you go up this track, you can see that dice appear on the left-hand side, and that means when you do the trace roll step, you'll get the appropriate dice, these ones here, and you'll roll a certain number of these square dice, and that will tell you how many enemies come from the enemy deck and attach to your side over here. And when they attach to your board like this, the top one comes at the bottom and other ones go under it, and only the top one's special abilities are relevant. But on the other side, you have stats here. You have its life, basically, and how much damage it does depending on the roll on this dice. But we'll get into the combat system a bit later. Now, I won't go into detail into the turn sequence and everything, but just give you a rough idea what happens. You'll get the opportunity to increase your stats in various ways. And this all comes down to the programming aspect of the game. And I really like this. This is how they've sort of represented the idea that you're a hacker and you're in cyberspace and you're doing all these things. So what you do, you usually start with counters set up on here, but just assuming you don't have any there, you draw from your bag and you set up counters on the light coloured spaces. Now, I should point out that these spaces here are locked at the start of the game, so you won't get those. But as you go on, you can unlock these spaces and give you even more opportunities and get more data tokens out on the board. So, as I said, you draw your counters out and you put them on the light coloured spaces. You do this every turn because you'll be discarding and using some of these counters during the turn. So you've got this, and then you get a programming step, and this is where you get to shuffle these things around in order to create patterns to launch programs. How cool is that? Really cool. So in this case, my body has a programming value of 4, which means I can move these things around 4 times. And I can either move a token, like so, or I can swap a token with one next to it. Super simple. Now, I'm assuming that later on there might be different ways you can manipulate this. I'm not really sure. I've only done the prologue, as I said. But certainly at the start, there are opportunities straight away. And you have set programs to allow you to increase your stats because you want to get these stats up so you can use them during combat and other events. So the game comes with some nice reference cards here. If we look at the reference cards, we can see we've got a basic patterns card, which I've sleeved, so it's a bit reflective, but there you go. So basically, if you get 3 in a row of a particular data type, you can get an increase of the same coloured stat. So for example, if you manage to manipulate this so you get 3 blues in a row, you'll be increasing your memory stat by 1. Once you do that, you'll have to take those tokens off your launcher and put them in the dump. Now, all tokens that are used when you launch programs go in the dump, and when you run out of tokens in your bag, you can refill your bag with the tokens from the dump. I don't want to get into too much detail because, as I said, I'm going to do a review. But you can easily get these in patterns of 3, for example. So if you do 3 in a row of red, you'll get an increase in your power and stuff like that. Also, if you get a pattern of 4 different colours in a particular row, you can get experience as well. And experience can be very handy to improve your character. During the game, you can also get corrupted data tokens, which can clog up your data bag and make things a bit more difficult. And there's more details too that I won't go into just at this point. But as you can see, it's a nice little mini game in every turn of deciding how you want to improve your character, what you want to do by launching these little programs. And also, of course, at the end of your launch step, you probably want to get most of these tokens, if you can, into the dark spaces, because in the next turn, you'll just be filling up the light blue spaces. So you want more data out there so you can move them around. Or maybe not, depending on your particular strategy. Now, you're probably wondering now what you do with all these stats. Well, they do various things. This memory one allows you to manipulate your data tokens off your launcher to get them in better positions. The shield one basically cancels out hits from your enemies when they attack you. The reroll lets you re-roll your dice when you're in combat. And the power one lets you add extra power dice to your attack when you're attacking enemies. So enemies, I hear you ask. Well, here they come, various bot creatures and things which can attack you either physically or in the cybernetic ether. And they get set up over here on the enemy card side of your board, and they will be dealing damage to you. And of course, if your life points here go down to nothing down on this side, I actually made a mistake of going towards the icon when I was playing, but it actually is down here to 0. You are going to be kicked out of your body and you're going to have to find yourself a new body, which is not a great thing. But you don't get chucked out of the game, of course. So the combat system is nice and straightforward, works really well. You basically have a couple of dice. These are the enemy dice. You roll these for the enemy. And one of them you put on a card. So this, counting back from your top card, you put it on here, and this tells you the order that these things go into attack and whether all of them are going to attack or some of them are going to attack. Because if you roll a blank, you won't be putting it down at all, and the enemies won't attack you. This one is the combat results, and this has 2 icons on them, and that corresponds to the attack values on the card. So usually this icon means that there'll be less damage, and this one is more damage, though they can do special things as well. The other good thing is during your launch step, you can launch patterns from your launcher to do various things to enemies as well. So you're launching patterns to fight the things in cyberspace, which is very, very cool. Of course, you'll get to add dice to your roll, you'll be using these square dice here, and you'll get 1 to start with on the basic body, but depending how much power you spend, you can get extra dice, and then you roll your dice, and what you do is on your body card here. So you might be able to do a simple result several times over. You may be able to do a more complex, more effective result only once. You alternate attacks back and forth and until you use up all your dice results. It's a really nice, elegant little system, and I enjoyed playing with it. So that's a very, very, very rough overview. And as I said, I'll do a full summary when I've played more, because I've only played the prologue, and that's certainly not enough to give you a good idea about the game. However, things are good to start with. I enjoyed the prologue by myself. I enjoyed moving things around on the launcher. It was pretty simple, just getting different patterns and stuff like that. Seemed a little bit straightforward, but I can see the potential for how this system can be used as we get into other more complex games. So I think it's going to be fun as it goes on, and also as you develop your character, you get experience. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned is that there's many, many cards of different types, and they take you through the adventure that you're playing. So you'll have a set of these cards depending on the particular adventure, and as you go through these different cards, there'll be some background material on there, and then on the other side it will tell you your goal and any special rules and various things that happen during player activity and world activity steps. So that'll lead you through the thematic part of the particular adventure, and there's heaps and heaps of these. So there's a whole lot of here. Oh, and there's also, I believe, a scenario generation system as well, because there's a whole lot of general scenario cards as well. So much going on. In the back here, there's a whole lot of cards which are locked, so you'll be unlocking those during the games. These are the adventure cards, this is the scenario generators, and these are the enemies. And we've got a whole lot of different bodies as well that you can go into. So heaps and heaps of content. Another thing you've got, as you get more experience, you can get faction augments and class augments as well. So this is where the programming system gets really interesting, and that you can launch particular programs which you can add to your character, which is super cool. And you can either get ones that, the class ones are yours alone, faction ones you can swap around to other players as well. And there's a heap of opportunity here for special abilities. There's also reward cards you go through, and you can get special rewards, which usually allow you to get, you can get augments, recover wounds, all that kind of stuff as well. Let's have a quick look in here. Yeah, look at these programs, fantastic. I mean, I imagine when you're fighting the enemies and things that, you know, if you just launch a program at just the right time, it can turn the tide of battle. I'm looking forward to playing this more. It's very cool. As you can see, there's a stack of adventures here, and there's some extra ones as well in the expansions. So this should keep me pretty busy with all the different types of adventures. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works. And then there'll be boss fights as well when you get onto those bosses, and you'll be having to tackle them. I imagine you'll have to be a little bit more powerful than I was in my prologue game before you start tackling those. Because, you know, even just these enemies are slightly challenging. I got kicked out of my body once just in the prologue because I was just getting to know it. There's also, of course, special abilities on your districts that allow you to do various things. So, nice little system. I'm kind of impressed, and I do like the way that moving these counters around and launching patterns does feel like programming something and then launching the program. I think that's pretty cool. As always, the production is just gorgeous, as you can see. Those little component trays are lovely. These plastic components are absolutely lovely as well. The miniatures are great. Let me just show you a few. As you can see, very much the Japanese cyberpunk theme. Awaken Realms miniatures are always good, and the quality here is no different. Really, to me, if you told me this was a full Awaken Realms release, I wouldn't have realised any different. I think really the only difference is that you just don't have that extra level of complexity and that real sense of going through a campaign. This is more, you can jump in and out of games. And I think that's a good thing, because I don't have the time for long campaigns, so I really like the idea that you can jump in and out of games. This one's pretty cool. He's got a shield arrangement coming up. It's going to be interesting to paint. I'll have to mask that off somehow. But a lovely selection of cyberpunk miniatures. They all have lots and lots of character. Anyway, I want to keep this as an overview because I just got the game and I've just played the prologue, and that's as far as I've got. I will play it some more. So look out for a full review of this, and also look out for my rules and reference sheet. I'll be making one for this game and making it available on my website at orderofgamers.com. So there's a lot more to discover here about Tamashii, but I'm really impressed with it to start with. It looks gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, very immersive style of game. And really everything we've come to expect from Awaken Realms games now, which are always beautifully produced. I will see you next time. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. This is the Esoteric Order of Gamers, orderofgamers.com. Check out my social media channels. Check out the website for hundreds of rules and reference sheets. And also, I'm on all the social medias, so you can follow me and see what I'm doing next. And of course, there's a Patreon page if you want to support the EOG. Bye for now, and good gaming.